motor patterns. I had originally learned about motor patterns through Ray Coppinger and Ken McCord. Prey drives is fairly common, and basically prey drives are motor patterns. So these motor patterns are innate and instinctive behaviors in our dogs, and foraging and predation is a motor pattern. The motor patterns often looked like this example of eye, stalk, chase, grab, bite, kill, bite, dissect, consume, and there's a retrieve motor pattern in there as well. When man began to selectively breed domestic dogs for certain behaviors, these motor patterns were morphed, and hounds were specifically bred for searching and tracking. Sporting breeds were bred for stalking and pointing. Herding breeds were bred for chasing and driving, and terrier breeds for grabbing and tackling. Retrievers were obviously bred for retrieving. And with selective breeding, these motor patterns have developed within specific breeds. So when these motor patterns are turned on, it's influenced by the breed, the age, and the environment. So some dogs show motor patterns at 4 to 5 months old, and you'll see them eye and stalk and chase and grab bite on one of their toys. Some puppies will even continue with the grab bite into head shake, dissect motor patterns, which is basically killing the squeaky toy. Some dogs have too much of a predation motor pattern for what the skills they've been bred for. So examples you've heard of: the retriever that crushes the bird, or the border collie that bites the livestock too hard, and or even the pointer that actually gets stuck pointing. So the tricky thing about motor patterns is that they can be changed by what is reinforced. It can be learned or it can be reinforced through humans. So the motor patterns like eye, stalk, chase, it's a product of dopamine and endorphin rushes. Dopamine is an excitatory transmitter. It's pleasurable, but it tells the body to keep moving. So due to these endorphin rushes and dopamine rushes, the motor patterns are internally and externally rewarded. When an owner continuously chains motor patterns through repetition, the dogs can become what you might consider dopamine addicts, and it can cause serious behavior problems such as compulsive behaviors. For example, the dog that can't stop fetching, or the dogs that get fixated on squirrels, or the dogs that are chasing moving cars. Therefore, it's really important for owners to be careful about what kind of motor patterns are being taught and reinforced, because the intensity level can be increased and decreased. When training, I'll use these innate behaviors as a reward, but you've got to be careful because sometimes too much of a good thing can be a really bad thing. If the drive is too high, you're better off to start working on some other reinforcements. Motor patterns can be increased and decreased in intensity. Therefore, it's important to control the onset of chase. If not, it can cause high arousal, which can tip over to aggression, bites, and liability. Because motor patterns are chained behaviors, you can rearrange them, so to speak, and move motor patterns faster into foraging/consume. It's just as good to work the mental part of your puppy's brain, not always the physical side that produces dopamine. Which brings me into the topic of enrichment and mental stimulation. Dogs have a keen sense of smell, and they love to utilize their noses, and basically they experience the world through their nose. And we also know that dogs are scavengers, so for mental enrichment, what I do is I take some empty femur bones and they're hollow inside. And what I wind up doing is I pack these femur bones. I can use some little strips of chicken and put them in each bone. And I wind up taking some dog food that's probably mixed with canned dog food or even just a little bit of wet food that creates a little bit of a broth to where it's going to freeze and stick together when I put it in the refrigerator. So packing these bones and then later giving them when my dogs are bored or if they need to settle down. It's also great for destructive chewers. If you have dogs that dissect their toys way too fast, you can actually get them to dissect these bones. And what I'll do is I'll pack these bones, I'll stick them in my freezer, and I'll freeze them so they take much longer to dissect. And later on, I'll either hide them in my house or I'll hide them in my backyard so they can go and hunt for them and start dissecting the bones. It's also great for positive reinforcement to crate training, and it's also wonderful for dogs that have separation anxiety. So I've packed the bones, wrapped them up in aluminum foil, and stuck them in the refrigerator. And I repeat the same process with each bone. I usually do it the night before, and that way in the morning if I need to leave, I have several stuffed femur bones in my freezer that are ready to go. The Kong Wobbler toy is a great toy that holds food and treats. You can do a combination of kibble and treats, and it randomly falls out with any kind of nose pushing and also with paw pushing. It's just another great toy that is wonderful for mental enrichment. Again, it can be used for all the things that I mentioned before, and it's just brain work for him. I'll also create what's called scavenger hunts, and scavenger hunts are where I take his meal and basically I scatter all of his dry dog food in the backyard, and that way he can hunt and sniff and eat his meal. And again, it just gives him enrichment. So here you see Owen in the backyard. He is slowly just eating his meal. And again, it's giving him a great pleasure from having to do so, but it's not producing the dopamine rushes.